Have you ever wondered about this aspect? Africa possesses vast territories and an enormous amount of resources. Officially, these territories are inhabited by hunter and fisher communities who essentially practice subsistence farming. However, the population density is extremely low. There are no cities, nor are there signs of civilization such as factories, roads, or ports. For some reason, people voluntarily chose to remain within the confines of primitive dwellings, hunting and fishing. And according to some claims, this has been the case for thousands of years, which seems quite strange. It appears that these lands were abandoned, and to justify the lack of population, stories were invented about small groups of fishermen and hunters, often referred to as indigenous people. This implies that no one lived on these lands before them, further complicating the understanding of this history. It seems that the histories of these lands were written around the same time in one office. When the topic of a 19th century nuclear war is brought up, many are puzzled and ask, against whom could it have been fought? The answer to this question often surprises or amuses people. Was it against Africa? After all, it seemed there was nothing special there. More accurately, nothing special remains there now, and what remains is unknown to most people. So let's try to learn more today. What do we know about Africa? Let's start our exploration with ancient maps. They show many lakes and rivers, along the banks of which countless cities were located. Today, many of these rivers and lakes have disappeared, and the ancient cities are gone. In the north of Africa, where life once thrived, now lies the largest desert on the planet. In places where the ancient cities of Algouche, Setra, Los Letem, and Grion once stood, today you can see huge round craters. The formation of Richat, or the Eye of the Sahara, with a diameter of 50 kilometers and melted stone, is truly astonishing. Let's raise a couple of rhetorical questions. As everyone knows, Africa is rich in minerals and is very close to Europe, but for some unknown reasons, it remained untouched until the second half of the 19th century. Instead of focusing their efforts on resource-rich Africa, which is almost next door, the Spanish traveled thousands of kilometers to South America. The colonization and conquest of South America began in 1498, but for unclear reasons, the colonization of Africa was delayed for almost 4 centuries. Who inhabited Africa until recently? And what happened to the once prosperous continent that is now a desert? Let's turn to African legends. The inhabitants of the Upper Nile still remember the mysterious light-skinned people, the Bakwezi, a mysterious tribe that amazed the locals with their knowledge and skills. They were said to do things that no human could achieve. According to legends, these people came to the territory of modern Uganda from the north. They founded stone cities and settlements, dug irrigation canals, and in some places cut trenches and created holes in the rock that resembled mines, reaching depths of up to 70 meters. The Bakwezi amazed the local population not only with their knowledge, but also with their extraordinary abilities. They were said to fly over lakes, climb sheer cliffs, heal any diseases, and recount events from long ago. Stories about a powerful light-skinned tribe that appeared out of nowhere and disappeared without a trace have been passed down through generations for centuries. So it is not surprising that the arrival of the first Europeans in Uganda in 1862 evoked a full spectrum of emotions among the locals, from fear to deep reverence, as they were mistaken for the mythical Bakwezi. Modern Ugandan peoples, such as the Bakonjo, Toro, and Ganda, consider the Bakwezi to be their ancestors. And there are many similar legends across Africa. Is it really possible to believe that all these stories are mere figments of imagination? It is particularly noteworthy to mention the ancient structures in Africa that have survived to this day. Even a shallow investigation reveals that there are plenty of such structures. Consider the pyramids of Meru, numbering approximately 400. Some of them show signs of melting and have damaged tops. Then there are the megaliths of Ethiopia, the most famous of which are the obelisks of Aksum. In 1920, the obelisk was cut into pieces by the Italians and taken to Italy, but was later returned. Today, its installation can be observed using heavy construction equipment, while the original builders managed to erect the 24-meter obelisk without the help of cranes, equivalent to the height of a 9-story building. Also worth mentioning are the mysterious death holes of Volumbi, shrouded in mystery and located on Tanda Hill, 70 kilometers from Mugenya. In the local Ugandan language, the word Volumbi means death. There are more than 200 holes on this hill. Today, the hill is covered with dense thickets, and without a guide, one could accidentally fall into one of these holes. They are arranged in a specific order, each about 1.5 meters in diameter, with depths ranging from 3 to 70 meters. The holes are cut into the rock and go perpendicularly deep. Similar holes have been found in other parts of Uganda. Their exact age remains unknown, but locals claim that these structures have existed for a long time. In shape, these holes resemble mining shafts, but only in a few places where such holes have been found, there are signs of minerals, and in very limited quantities. I believe that the resources may have been depleted, and what was available has already been extracted and used. Therefore, the question remains, who and how drilled the rocks to depths of tens of meters? The diameter of these holes is 1.5 meters. It is important to realize that drilling the rocks was not done without purpose, and most likely, it was related to the extraction of minerals. Such work could have been carried out by a highly developed civilization, the existence of which we still know nothing about. In 1972, a French company was mining uranium ore at the Oklo mine in Gabon. During the standard analysis of ore samples, it was discovered that the content of uranium, 235 isotope, was lower than usual. Subsequently, a deficit of about 200 kilograms of this isotope was recorded. Experts from the French Atomic Energy Commission expressed serious concern, as the amount of missing material was enough to create several atomic bombs. Further research showed that the level of uranium, 235 concentration in the Oklo mine, corresponded to the level characteristic of spent fuel from a nuclear reactor. In 1975, a scientific conference was held in Libreville, the capital of Gabon, where nuclear physics specialists tried to explain this phenomenon. After lengthy discussions, it was decided to recognize the Oklo deposit as the only known natural nuclear reactor on Earth. It is believed that this reactor arose 1.8 billion years ago and operated for 500,000 years before burning out, leaving the ore as a product of its decay. However, not all conference participants agreed with this decision. Some scientists considered it far-fetched and untenable upon critical examination, arguing that a chain reaction can only occur under artificial conditions. They argued that too many random factors must coincide for such a reaction to start, and any mathematician would confirm that the probability of this is so small that it can be considered zero. At nuclear power plants, dozens of people monitor the reactor's operation around the clock, regulating its modes to prevent it from stopping or exploding. Any slightest mistake can lead to a catastrophe similar to Chernobyl or Fukushima. But is it possible that everything functioned by itself for almost 500,000 years? The Oklo mine in Gabon resembles not a natural nuclear reactor, but a nuclear waste repository created by a high-tech civilization. This site appears to have been ideally chosen and prepared for such purposes. Thanks to the basalt sarcophagus, not a single gram of radioactive material leaked into the environment. The theory that the Oklo mine is a nuclear waste disposal site seems technically more plausible than the assumption of a natural reactor. However, accepting this theory raises new questions. If it was a repository, there must have been a reactor from which the waste was brought. Where is it now? And what happened to the civilization that mined the ore, extracted uranium from it, built the reactor, and ultimately placed the spent fuel in Oklo? Yundum Airport is located in the Gambia, a country that was once a British colony, and is situated on the Atlantic coast of tropical Africa. This country is among the least economically developed nations. The industrial sector in the Gambia is very underdeveloped and limited to the production of peanut oil, beer, soft drinks, and sewing enterprises. However, the country has a real international airport, Yundum. The runway of this airport is 3,600 meters long and meets the strictest international standards, allowing it to accommodate aircraft of any weight. The residents of the Gambia did not fully build this runway. They merely covered already existing stone slabs, previously cleared of soil, with a layer of asphalt and marked it. If you look at satellite images, you can see that the central part of the Yundum Airport runway is actively used, while on both sides there are unused sections paved with light-colored slabs of an unusual sandy brown color. This observation leads to thoughts about an ancient civilization that once built a long and wide road of basalt slabs in Africa. These slabs were carefully cut, transported to the site, and laid with great precision. The question remains about the purpose of such roads. In the modern world, similar structures are used as runways. This raises an intriguing question. Could there have been flight technology in ancient times? Examples of such aircraft could be the vimanas mentioned in ancient Indian texts. Almost 6 decades ago, prisoners in one of the prisons located on Luzira Hill, near the capital of Uganda, Kampala, were engaged in earthworks to lay the foundation for the construction of utility buildings. During these works, one of the prisoners' pickaxes suddenly hit a hard object. It turned out to be a sculpture of a human head. The discovered object was part of a ceramic statue. Later, fragments of the body and limbs of this figure were found nearby. The workers refused to continue working at this site, convinced that the found sculpture was a bad omen. The head of the found statue was particularly notable, with a chin protruding straight forward, a long nose, and a hairstyle that remarkably resembled a judge's wig, and on the top of the head was something that looked like a cushion. In the same place where the so-called Luzira man was found, many pottery shards were discovered, which, according to scientists' estimates, are 5, 6 centuries old, similar in age to the statue. Scientists also noted the similarity of these shards with fragments of clay vessels found in the early 20th century in another mystical place, Fort Mugenya. In Fort Mugenya, located on the southern bank of the Katonga River in western Uganda, traces of ancient fortifications and a system of deep trenches cut into the rock with a total length of 6 kilometers have been preserved to this day, similar to those found on the island of Malta and in northern Peru. According to legends, Fort Mugenya was one of the places where the Bakwesi, the mysterious white people, lived. The first archaeological excavations in Mugenya were conducted in the early 1920s, and it was then that pottery shards were discovered, which were later sent to the British Museum. Not far from this site, scientific expeditions found the remains of irrigation systems, which, by all indications, were built by very skilled builders. Scientists compared the found remains of irrigation structures with similar constructions on the island of Sri Lanka, which are over 2,000 years old. In addition, during archaeological excavations at the fort, a mysterious clay cylinder adorned with incomprehensible symbols was discovered. The history of Great Zimbabwe deserves special attention. In 1867, German geologist Karl Mauch discovered an ancient settlement and a complex of structures that later became known as Great Zimbabwe. The word Zimbabwe in the local tribe's language translates to stone house. The discovered structure deeply impressed the scientist with its size and unusual architectural composition. A majestic stone wall, at least 250 meters long, about 10 meters high, and up to 5 meters wide at the base, surrounded the settlement, which probably once served as the residence of the ruler of this ancient region. Although Mauch found various household items among the ruins of Great Zimbabwe, characteristic of the local culture, he could not imagine that this architectural ensemble was created by Africans. Local tribes traditionally used clay, wood, and dry grass for building their homes and other structures, so the use of stone as a building material seemed unusual. The presence of archaeological finds of Arab and Persian origin indicates that Zimbabwe maintained connections with the outside world. British archaeologist Roger Summers, who studied the Zimbabwe mines in 1958, concluded that the mining methods were likely borrowed from India. The ruins of Zimbabwe are not unique. In the vicinity of the port of Novo Safala in Mozambique, there are ruins of several similar though smaller structures. It can be confidently stated that the elliptical wall did not serve defensive purposes. To date, more than 400 monuments of this ancient civilization are known. The purpose of the inner walls and passages remains unclear, as does the construction, which does not imply the presence of a roof. The function of the conical tower with a zigzag pattern is also unclear. The style of masonry is remarkably similar to the style of the walls of the city of Gebel Barkal in western Sudan, prompting thoughts about the uniqueness of Zimbabwe's architectural style and its difference from the European one. Can we imagine that such complex architectural structures were created by so-called savages? Lifting and placing massive stone blocks could only be done by those who believe in the primitiveness of the builders. Already in 1934, scientists suggested a connection between Mugenya and the ruins of Great Zimbabwe. Comparing the architectural plans of Ugandan and Zimbabwean structures, as well as the discovery of the so-called Luzira man near the capital of Uganda, showed many similarities between them, including semicircular or semi-elliptical enclosures of small courtyards adjacent to the walls of the central building, and similar construction methods of the walls. Subsequent excavations in Mugenya led to the discovery of pottery shards very similar to the household items found in Great Zimbabwe. And the most surprising, among the ruins of Great Zimbabwe, a cylinder similar to the one found in Mugenya was discovered, and a similar cylinder was previously found during excavations in Cyprus. The city of Gebel Barkal is now located in the center of the Sahara Desert, difficult to reach without reliable transportation. The ruins of this city lie among the desert peaks of Mount Gebelfurnung. A zigzagging stone road paved with boulders leads to the city, climbing to the summit at a height of 1,000 feet. At the foot of the hill, on both sides of the road, lie overgrown ruins of palaces, streets, and buildings of one of the largest vanished cities in Africa. The question arises, could the descendants of the mysterious light-skinned people in Africa have reached a technological level allowing them to create nuclear weapons, considering the abundance of uranium mines on the continent, such as in Bure, Transvaal, and Rhodesia? What do you think?